The deepest parts of the ocean are not empty. Far below the last trace of sunlight, where the water hovers just above freezing and the pressure reaches 200 times what we experience at sea level, movement becomes expensive. Every burst of speed costs energy that may not be replaced for days or even weeks, so almost nothing hunts by chasing. Instead, the deep sea has spent hundreds of millions of years perfecting a different strategy: waiting. A shark whose jaws can launch forward out of its own face has existed for more than 100 million years, yet no human has ever watched it hunt in the wild. Another animal, smaller than a human forearm, leaves perfectly circular wounds in whales, sharks, and even submarines, despite almost none of its attacks ever being witnessed. There is a fish whose teeth became so large that its own skull had to reshape itself simply so it could close its mouth. And there is another whose mates surrender their bodies entirely, fusing into the female until they become little more than living organs that will remain with her for the rest of her life. These animals are separated by millions of years of evolution. Most are not closely related, yet they all arrived at remarkably similar solutions. They don't chase, they don't sprint, they wait. In this video, we're descending into one of the least forgiving environments on Earth to discover why darkness keeps producing the same kind of predator again and again, and why patience has become one of the most powerful hunting weapons evolution has ever invented. There is a boundary in the ocean that no current can carry away. It is not marked by stone or by shifting water, but by the disappearance of light itself. At roughly 200 meters, which is about 656 feet, the last sunlight fades beyond practical use. This region is known as the mesopelagic zone. Beneath it, photosynthesis comes to an end. Without sunlight to power microscopic plant life, the foundation supporting nearly every familiar food web begins to dissolve into scarcity. From that point onward, every meal becomes uncertain. Tiny drifting organisms grow less abundant, and the animals that depend on them become farther apart. A predator may wander through the darkness for days without finding anything worth catching. Some endure even longer stretches before another opportunity appears. Food is no longer a dependable rhythm. It arrives as an interruption, separated by long intervals, where survival depends less on strength than restraint. In such a place, movement carries a hidden cost. Every sweep of a fin, every burst of speed, every failed pursuit spends energy that cannot be recovered unless another meal eventually appears. An unsuccessful chase is more than disappointment. It is a withdrawal from a reserve that may have taken weeks to build. Across countless generations, individuals that rushed toward uncertain rewards gradually vanished from the lineage. Those that endured were the ones that resisted unnecessary effort until success became almost unavoidable. This slow arithmetic shaped bodies as surely as bones and muscles. Evolution was not rewarding hesitation for its own sake. It was refining efficiency with remarkable persistence. A hunter that remained almost motionless while the surrounding water drifted past possessed an advantage unavailable to restless competitors. Instead of searching endlessly through an immense wilderness, it allowed chance, currents, and the movements of other creatures to narrow the distance. The final strike became the only expensive action in an otherwise economical existence. Darkness reinforced that strategy in another important way. Vision, so dominant near the surface, loses much of its usefulness where sunlight never arrives. High-speed pursuit depends upon tracking direction, judging distance, and continuously correcting movement as prey changes course. Those abilities become increasingly difficult when there is no natural illumination to reveal them. Patience requires far less information. A predator does not need to follow every turn. if it has already positioned itself where opportunity is most likely to arrive. Over tens of millions of years, unrelated lineages encountered these same conditions again and again. They began from different ancestors, carried different anatomical histories, and occupied different corners of the ocean. Yet the environment continued presenting the same challenge, and natural selection continued favoring remarkably similar answers. Spend almost nothing, remain prepared, commit completely only when the outcome has shifted strongly in your favor. The repetition of that pattern is one of the clearest signatures left by life in the deep ocean. Even the surrounding water participates in this patient economy. Ocean currents transport drifting animals across enormous distances, delivering moments of possibility without requiring constant travel from the waiting hunter. The predator becomes less like an explorer and more like part of the landscape itself, existing within the slow circulation of the sea until timing and proximity finally align. Waiting, then, is not the absence of action. It is an active biological achievement maintained by finely balanced metabolism, specialized senses, and extraordinary discipline written into living tissue through immense spans of evolutionary time. Every moment without unnecessary motion preserves another chance for survival. Every carefully conserved reserve increases the value of the next successful strike. That simple principle became one of the deepest ocean's most enduring laws. Beneath the reach of sunlight, life repeatedly discovered that certainty was worth more than speed, and that the smallest movement, made at precisely the right instant, could outweigh countless frantic pursuits scattered across the darkness. Among the many branches of life that settled into the deep ocean, one lineage transformed waiting into something that resembled an invitation. The order known as Lophiiformes contains more than 300 species, occupying habitats that extend from comparatively shallow seafloors to depths approaching 4,000 meters, which is about 13,123 feet. Across this remarkable diversity, their forms vary widely, yet they share a single invention that reshaped the mathematics of hunting in darkness. Projecting from the top of the skull is a modified dorsal spine called the elysium. Rather than standing upright like the fin support from which it evolved, it curves forward above the mouth with remarkable flexibility. At its tip rests the esca, a fleshy organ that shines with living light. In many deep-sea species, that glow does not originate from the fish itself. Colonies of bioluminescent bacteria inhabit the esca, producing illumination that becomes part of an intricate partnership between two very different forms of life. The light alone is only the beginning. The esca sways with delicate precision, rising, dipping, and drifting through the surrounding water. In one species, it may resemble a small worm. In another, it evokes the uneven movements of a drifting crustacean or another tempting morsel. Countless generations of natural selection refined these displays until they became convincing enough to exploit the expectations of hungry animals. What appears to be an effortless motion is the result of an evolutionary performance practiced over millions of years. The approaching fish is not wandering into danger through misfortune. It is responding to opportunity. Every adjustment of its body carries it nearer to what seems to be an easy meal. The anglerfish remains almost unchanged throughout the encounter, preserving energy until the distance separating hunter and prey becomes so small that retreat is no longer mechanically realistic. Then the transformation arrives with astonishing speed. The jaws swing open, and the mouth cavity expands to nearly 12 times its resting volume. Water surges inward, carrying the intended victim with it. Rather than grasping prey by force alone, the anglerfish creates powerful suction, drawing everything directly toward its throat. Almost immediately afterward, The incoming water escapes through the gills, while the captured animal remains enclosed within the mouth. Escape becomes exceptionally difficult because the teeth do not stand upright like ordinary spikes. They angle inward, forming a living barrier that favors movement in only one direction. Forward progress remains possible. Reverse movement becomes increasingly restricted as each struggle presses the prey more firmly against the curved points surrounding it. The trap is completed not through relentless pursuit, but through architecture shaped to prevent a second chance. Success in the deep sea cannot depend upon frequent feeding, so the anglerfish carries another remarkable adaptation within its body. Its stomach possesses extraordinary elasticity, allowing it to swallow prey approaching twice its own size. A single fortunate capture can provide nourishment for many days, reducing the need to expose itself through unnecessary movement in an environment where encounters with food remain unpredictable. Even after decades of research, the glowing lure retains part of its mystery. Scientists continue studying how these bacteria first established themselves within the esca, how the partnership is maintained throughout the fish's life, and what advantages the microorganisms themselves receive in return. The relationship appears stable and ancient, yet many of its biological details remain beyond present understanding. Together, the Elysium, the luminous esca, the expanding jaws, the inward curving teeth, and the elastic stomach reveal an animal assembled around a single principle. Nothing is hurried. Almost every adaptation serves the same patient design, allowing the surrounding darkness to deliver the next meal before the anglerfish spends more energy than the moment requires. Long before anyone understood the full story, museum collections held a puzzle that seemed almost impossible to resolve. Deep-sea anglerfish brought to the surface in research nets were overwhelmingly female. Their broad heads, luminous lures, and remarkable jaws became familiar to zoologists, yet adult males remained strangely absent. On rare occasions, much smaller fishes with unusual anatomy and almost no obvious resemblance to the females appeared in collections from similar depths. They possessed reduced teeth, delicate bodies, and features so different that they were described as entirely separate species, as though they belonged to another branch of the deep ocean altogether. The mystery endured for decades until one remarkable specimen changed the history of marine biology. In 1925, the Icelandic biologist Bjarni Salmonsson examined a female anglerfish carrying two tiny growths attached beneath her body. Their appearance suggested external parasites, an understandable conclusion because nothing else seemed to explain their presence. They clung firmly to the female, drawing attention more as biological curiosities than as clues to an entirely different reproductive strategy. Not long afterward, the British biologist Charles Tate Regan studied the same specimen with greater care. The supposed parasites were not parasites at all, they were males. More precisely, they were males that had ceased to exist as independent animals. Their tissues had fused directly with the female. Their circulatory systems had become one, allowing nutrients to pass from her bloodstream into theirs. The attached males no longer maintained separate digestion or independent circulation. Their jaws had become permanently fixed. Their eyes had withered through disuse, and almost every organ unnecessary for reproduction had begun to disappear. This astonishing transformation begins much earlier in life. A young male anglerfish enters the world with functioning eyes and an exceptionally refined sense of smell. His earliest existence is devoted almost entirely to locating a female of his own species. Chemical signals drifting through the surrounding water become his guide, each faint trace carrying the possibility of survival. Within an immense ocean where individuals may be separated by enormous distances, finding a compatible mate is among the greatest challenges any deep-sea animal must overcome. When that meeting finally occurs, the male bites into the female's skin and remains attached. The bite is only the beginning. Enzymes released during the process gradually dissolve the boundaries separating their tissues. Over the following days, blood vessels connect until the female becomes the sole source of nourishment. The male no longer needs to hunt, digest food, or sustain many of the organs that once supported an independent existence. His stomach shrinks, his liver and kidneys diminish. The body simplifies with remarkable efficiency, preserving almost nothing beyond the structures required to produce sperm whenever the female becomes ready to reproduce. Through this extraordinary partnership, the uncertainty of locating another mate never returns. The female carries a permanent reproductive companion wherever she drifts, eliminating one of the greatest obstacles created by life in an environment where encounters between members of the same species are exceptionally uncommon. In several species, a single female may carry as many as 8 fused males at the same time, each connected through shared circulation, each reduced to a living reproductive organ sustained entirely by her body. Nothing about this arrangement belongs to metaphor or imagination. It is the literal biology of deep-sea anglerfish, one of the most extreme expressions of sexual dimorphism known among vertebrate animals. What first appeared to naturalists as a collection of unrelated specimens eventually revealed itself as a single life cycle, shaped by an ocean where even the simple act of finding another member of the same species became difficult enough for evolution to rewrite the meaning of partnership itself. For almost a century, the living anglerfish remained strangely absent from science, even while its body rested in museum drawers around the world. Researchers examined preserved specimens with extraordinary care, measuring bones, tracing muscles, and comparing organs from one collection to another. Yet every conclusion emerged from animals that had already completed the final chapter of their lives before reaching human hands. Their movements, posture, and ordinary behavior remained hidden beneath the weight of the deep ocean itself. The difficulty was not a lack of determination. It was the journey to the surface. Deep-sea anglerfish are exceptionally delicate, and conventional trawl nets could retrieve only damaged remains. As the animals were pulled upward, the enormous change in pressure altered soft tissues, distorted internal structures, and erased many of the features that defined them in life. Their glowing lure no longer shone. Their natural position within the water vanished. Even the contents of the stomach were sometimes forced outward before the specimen reached the deck of a research vessel. Anatomy survived well enough to study, but behavior disappeared almost completely. For generations, marine biologists reconstructed the anglerfish through careful inference. Every tooth, every joint, and every flexible membrane suggested how the animal might feed or drift through the water. These reconstructions were thoughtful and often remarkably accurate, yet they remained informed predictions rather than direct observation. The deep ocean continued to keep the ordinary life of the anglerfish almost entirely beyond human sight. That changed during the year 2014. Marine biologist Bruce Robison and his colleagues at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute were conducting an expedition off the coast of California with a remotely operated vehicle exploring the deep water. At a depth of approximately 600 meters, which is about 1,969 feet, the cameras encountered a living female black sea-devil anglerfish suspended within the water column. It belonged to the genus Melanocetus, one of the most recognizable groups of deep-sea anglerfish, yet no confirmed footage had ever shown one alive in its natural surroundings. The encounter revealed an animal only about 9 centimeters long, which is about 4 feet. Its body appeared almost translucent beneath the vehicle lights, allowing several internal organs to appear as faint shapes beneath the skin. Extending from the head was the familiar elysium, ending in a glowing esca whose light remained active exactly where generations of researchers had expected it to be. The illumination was not dramatic or constant. Instead, it formed part of an understated display, perfectly suited to the surrounding darkness. The observation continued for several minutes, long enough for details impossible to recover from preserved specimens to emerge. The fish remained nearly motionless, making only the smallest adjustments with its fins to maintain position. Its body rested at a slight downward angle while the lure projected above and ahead of the mouth. Every feature seemed arranged to reduce unnecessary effort while presenting the luminous bait where passing prey would be most likely to notice it. When the footage was released publicly during the month of November in the year 2014, it represented far more than a remarkable image. It confirmed that many long-accepted interpretations, drawn from anatomy, had been fundamentally correct. At the same time, it revealed a precision and restraint that preserved specimens could never communicate. The living animal possessed a presence impossible to infer from bones and preserved tissue alone, demonstrating that the anglerfish had refined its patient existence with an elegance visible only when observed in the world that shaped it. Few predators reveal their purpose as plainly as the Sloane's viperfish. Long before its body comes into view, its silhouette is defined by an impossible arrangement of teeth, a design that appears almost incompatible with the skull supporting it. Across tropical and temperate oceans, this remarkable fish occupies waters ranging from about 200 meters, which is about 656 feet, to nearly 5,000 meters, that is nearly 16,404 feet. Throughout that immense vertical world, it has remained one of the deep ocean's most recognizable ambush hunters. The first impression is always the same. The 2 foremost fangs, rising from the lower jaw, seem far too large for the animal carrying them. They are not merely elongated teeth, but structures that exceed the ordinary limits of the skull itself. When the mouth begins to close, those fangs cannot fit within it in the familiar way seen in most fishes. Instead, they extend upward and backward, passing alongside the eyes and stopping only a short distance from the brain. Accommodating such extraordinary weapons required the head itself to change. The skull developed an upward angle that allows the lower jaw to swing through a wider arc without driving the fangs into vital tissues. The entire profile of the animal reflects this compromise. What appears at first to be an awkward arrangement is, in reality, a carefully balanced structure in which every bone exists to support a single decisive movement. That movement lasts only an instant. In the deep ocean, hesitation carries consequences measured not in lost opportunities alone, but in survival itself. Encounters with prey may be separated by long intervals, making every strike unusually valuable. Rather than delivering repeated bites, the viperfish is built to secure its meal immediately. The oversized fangs are sharpened for penetration rather than cutting, ensuring that the first contact becomes the last opportunity the prey receives to escape. Once the jaws close, the teeth function less like blades than the bars of a trap. The victim becomes pinned between opposing fangs that prevent twisting, pulling, or slipping free. The structure transforms the mouth into a rigid cage, holding struggling prey in position until swallowing can begin. there is remarkably little need for prolonged wrestling. The mechanical design accomplishes much of the work before strength alone would have become necessary. Approaching that moment requires remarkable restraint. Extending from the back is the first dorsal spine, carrying at its tip a small light-producing organ known as a photophore. Held forward above the open mouth, it creates the appearance of a tiny drifting organism. The glow is modest, blending naturally with the scattered flashes already common throughout the deep sea. Passing animals respond not to the predator beneath them, but to what appears to be another potential source of food suspended in the surrounding water. The final approach belongs almost entirely to the prey. Drawn toward the glowing point, it closes the remaining distance through its own movement. Only when it enters the narrow space framed by the waiting fangs does the viperfish respond. The head snaps downward with remarkable speed, bringing the upper and lower jaws together in perfect alignment. The oversized teeth meet around the prey from opposite directions, completing a mechanism refined through countless generations of natural selection. Every feature of the Sloane's viperfish reflects the same principle carried through the deep ocean. Its skull surrendered ordinary proportions so its teeth could become extraordinary. Its posture favors certainty over pursuit. Its luminous signal invites rather than pursues. In a realm where wasted effort carries immense cost, even the most intimidating weapon exists not for repeated combat, but for one carefully measured instant in which precision becomes far more valuable than speed. Every evening, as the world above slips toward night, an immense procession begins beneath the waves. It unfolds beyond the reach of ordinary observation, involving countless animals rising together through the water column. Among them travels the Sloane's viperfish, a predator that refuses to remain anchored to a single depth. Instead, its life follows a daily rhythm that has continued for millions of years, linking distant layers of the ocean through one of the largest recurring migrations on Earth. Unlike many ambush hunters that wait within a familiar territory, the viperfish begins each ascent from remarkable depths. Individuals have been recorded rising from between 1,500 meters, which is about 4,921 feet, and 4,500 meters, that is nearly 14,764 feet. Their destination lies far above, within the mesopelagic waters beginning around 1,000 meters, which is about 3,281 feet, and extending upward toward approximately 200 meters, which is about 656 feet. Although darkness still dominates much of this region, drifting prey becomes noticeably more abundant than in the deeper water below. The viperfish is not climbing alone. Vast clouds of zooplankton begin moving upward as daylight fades from the surface. Small fishes follow these drifting organisms, feeding as they travel. Squid pursue the fishes, and predators such as the viperfish follow behind them, each level of the food web responding to the movement of the one before it. The migration resembles a slow pulse, passing through the ocean every evening, connecting creatures separated by tremendous distances during the daylight hours. From the deepest point of its journey to its highest destination, the round trip exceeds 1,000 vertical meters, that is nearly 3,281 feet. There are no mountains to guide the route, no visible landmarks, and almost no natural illumination. Yet, generation after generation completes the same passage with remarkable consistency. An adult viperfish, whose body rarely exceeds 35 centimeters in length, moves through an environment many thousands of times larger than itself, relying upon finely tuned senses rather than familiar scenery. The cost of this movement is substantial. Pressure changes continuously throughout the ascent and descent, while surrounding water gradually becomes less compressed and slightly warmer. Every shift requires physiological systems capable of functioning across dramatically different conditions without losing efficiency. At the same time, each journey exposes the viperfish to hunters larger and faster than itself. Remaining in the deepest water would reduce those encounters, but it would also reduce the chance of finding enough food to survive. The migration persists because the balance between danger and opportunity consistently favors movement over remaining below. As morning approaches, the direction reverses. The viperfish withdraws from the upper layers and returns toward the greater depths. Large tuna, swordfish, and dolphins increasingly dominate the brighter waters once daylight returns, using vision to pursue prey with a speed the viperfish cannot match. Descending before the surface grows bright allows it to avoid entering contests already won by animals adapted to a very different style of hunting. Rows of light-producing organs along the underside of the body reveal another refinement shaped by this daily journey. Rather than serving only as signals or lures, these photophores also create a faint glow matching the small amount of light filtering downward from above. Viewed from beneath, the viperfish becomes far more difficult to distinguish against the dim brightness overhead. Its outline softens into the surrounding water, reducing the contrast that would otherwise betray its presence to predators searching upward. Each ascent and descent forms part of a lifelong routine, repeated with remarkable consistency through changing seasons and shifting generations. The journey demands endurance as much as precision, reminding us that even an ambush hunter built for patience sometimes survives not by remaining in one place, but by following the slow breathing rhythm of the ocean itself. Time has altered continents, lifted mountain ranges, opened oceans, and erased entire dynasties of life. Yet, beneath the surface, where change often unfolds at a slower pace, certain designs have endured with remarkable persistence. The viperfish belongs to one of those enduring lineages, carrying within its body a hunting strategy whose origins stretch back beyond 100 million years into the ancient seas of the Cretaceous period. The modern viperfish is part of a broader family known as Stomiidae, a remarkable collection of deep-sea predators that also includes dragonfishes, loosejaws, and scaleless black dragonfishes. Fossil evidence indicates that relatives of this family were already present, while enormous reptiles still dominated the continents above. Although individual species have appeared and disappeared across immense spans of geological time, the central architecture of these hunters has remained strikingly familiar. Oversized fangs, elongated jaws, bodies equipped with light-producing organs, and a patient style of ambush hunting were already proving successful long before humanity existed to observe them. If a creature from the Cretaceous world could somehow descend into those ancient depths, it would encounter predators whose overall form and method would seem surprisingly recognizable. The details have shifted through evolution, yet the underlying solution has remained astonishingly consistent. Such persistence does not suggest that evolution stopped refining these animals. Rather, it reveals an environment that rarely demanded a fundamentally different answer. The deep ocean has always rewarded efficiency above excess. Food has remained scarce. Darkness has remained nearly complete. Pressure has continued to shape every living cell. Under those remarkably stable conditions, a successful design possessed little reason to abandon the qualities that had already secured survival across countless generations. During that immense stretch of history, life on the surface experienced extraordinary upheaval. Continents drifted into new positions, sea levels rose and fell repeatedly. Global climates shifted between warmer and cooler ages. Entire ecosystems appeared before eventually disappearing. Most dramatically, the asteroid impact that triggered the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction transformed the course of life across the planet, bringing an end to the non-avian dinosaurs while eliminating a vast number of other species inhabiting land and sea alike. The ancestors of today's viperfish lineage endured through those events. Their descendants continued waiting within the deep ocean, while the surface world rebuilt itself around entirely different communities of plants and animals. That continuity reflects not extraordinary luck, but remarkable compatibility between predator and environment. The conditions surrounding these fishes changed gradually enough that the essential mechanics of their hunting strategy never became obsolete. In evolutionary biology, successful designs are not preserved because they are dramatic or visually striking. They persist because every generation carrying those traits continues leaving descendants. Oversized fangs remained because they secured prey with exceptional reliability. Light-producing organs remained because they consistently increased the likelihood of attracting unsuspecting victims. A body adapted for restrained movement remained because conserving energy continued, offering greater rewards than constant pursuit. The deep ocean itself contributed to this continuity. Unlike environments closer to the surface, where changing temperatures, shifting coastlines, and rapidly evolving ecological relationships often create powerful selective pressures, the abyss has generally maintained the same defining characteristics across immense spans of time. Its darkness has remained constant. Its food has remained limited. Its immense pressure has remained unavoidable. As long as those conditions persisted, natural selection repeatedly favored the same biological solutions. For that reason, the viperfish represents more than an individual species surviving into the present. It preserves a behavioral tradition extending back through ancient oceans, offering a rare glimpse into predatory strategies already well established, while the earliest mammals were only beginning their own uncertain history upon the land. Within its waiting posture and carefully engineered jaws lives an inheritance, measured not in generations alone, but across one of the longest, uninterrupted stories written anywhere in the living world. Some predators reshape the space around them instead of rushing through it. The goblin shark achieves this through a mechanism so unusual that the decisive movement occurs not in its body, but in the sudden extension of its own face. Known to science as Mitsukurina austoni, this ancient shark possesses one of the most extraordinary feeding systems in the ocean, built around jaws that refuse to remain where ordinary shark jaws belong. In most sharks, the upper and lower jaws are attached to the skull by flexible structures that allow a modest degree of forward movement during a bite. This arrangement, called jaw protrusion, helps improve the reach of the mouth while preserving the familiar shape of the head. The goblin shark inherited the same general principle, yet evolution carried it far beyond the limits seen in any other living shark. Instead of remaining broadly aligned beneath the skull, the entire jaw assembly is suspended by exceptionally elastic ligaments and a specialized network of muscles. When the moment arrives, both jaws surge forward together in an explosive extension. They do not simply open wider. They travel outward from the face itself, transforming a slow-moving predator into something capable of striking across a surprising distance before nearby prey can respond. The projection is extraordinary. The jaws can extend forward by roughly 8 to 9% of the shark's total body length. On a large individual, this represents several centimeters, allowing the mouth to reach well beyond the position where another shark would already have exhausted its strike. The movement unfolds within a tiny fraction of a second, compressing what appears to be a leisurely approach into a sudden mechanical release. That additional reach changes the geometry of the hunt. Many predators must close almost the entire distance before attempting to bite, increasing the likelihood that prey will detect danger and flee. The goblin shark remains slightly farther away, occupying a position that appears comparatively safe. To a nearby fish, the broad snout advances with little urgency, giving few signs that an attack is imminent. Then, without warning, the jaws surge forward, closing the remaining gap almost instantly. The prey has little opportunity to react because the greatest movement belongs to the mouth rather than the body. Instead of accelerating through the surrounding water, the shark releases the stored potential of its elastic jaw mechanism. A fish that judged the distance correctly only a heartbeat earlier suddenly finds that distance no longer exists. The strike concludes before ordinary escape responses can fully develop. Almost immediately afterward, the jaws withdraw. The elastic structures that launched them forward pull the entire assembly back beneath the skull, restoring the familiar profile of the goblin shark. Moments after the capture, the predator once again appears slow and unremarkable, its unusual weapon concealed within the outline of its own head. The elongated snout contributes another remarkable adaptation. Beneath its flattened surface lies an exceptionally dense concentration of ampullae of Lorenzini, specialized sensory organs capable of detecting faint electrical fields produced by the muscle contractions of nearby animals. Every heartbeat, every subtle movement of living tissue generates tiny electrical signals within the surrounding water. In the deep ocean, where ordinary vision provides little guidance, these signals become a dependable source of information. The goblin shark does not rely upon sight alone to discover prey hidden in darkness. Instead, it reads invisible currents of electricity passing through the sea, locating animals whose bodies announce their presence with every contraction of muscle. Combined with its remarkable slingshot jaws, this sensory system allows the shark to remain patient until the precise instant when waiting gives way to one of the fastest mechanical strikes found anywhere beneath the surface. Some lineages survive by changing with every age they encounter. Others arrive at a solution so well suited to their surroundings that the passing of immense spans of time leaves only the smallest refinements behind. The goblin shark belongs to the latter story. Its ancestry reaches back roughly 125 million years, making the family Mitsukurinidae one of the oldest shark lineages still living in the modern ocean. The fossil record traces this family into the early Cretaceous, an era when the continents occupied different positions and giant reptiles dominated both land and sea. During those distant ages, oceans contained ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and later the formidable mosasaurs. Amid those ancient ecosystems swam sharks, whose overall design already resembled the unusual predator that continues drifting through the deep today. One extinct relative illustrates this remarkable continuity with unusual clarity. The genus Scapanorhynchus became known from Cretaceous fossils whose long, flattened snout and distinctive jaw structure appeared strikingly similar to those of the living goblin shark. Early paleontologists were so impressed by the resemblance that they questioned whether the fossil species and the modern shark might belong to the same genus. Later research demonstrated that they represent separate branches of the family, yet the comparison itself revealed how little the underlying body plan had changed across an extraordinary span of geological history. Many defining features of the living goblin shark appear to have deep evolutionary roots. The elongated snout, equipped with sensitive electrical receptors, the remarkable forward projection of the jaws, and the restrained style of hunting close to the seafloor all seem to reflect adaptations established long before the rise of humanity. Even while marine ecosystems transformed around them, these sharks continued, relying upon a combination of patience, specialized senses, and sudden mechanical precision. Such persistence becomes even more remarkable when viewed against the history of the planet itself. Near the end of the Cretaceous period, the event now known as the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction eliminated approximately 76% of all species living on Earth. Entire groups vanished forever. Non-avian dinosaurs disappeared from the continents, while marine ecosystems experienced equally profound losses. The ancestors of the goblin shark lineage endured through that upheaval without abandoning the fundamental design that had already served them for millions of years. Another immense challenge arrived much later during the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, a prolonged interval of exceptional global warming that altered ocean temperatures and reshaped marine communities across the world. Countless organisms faced changing habitats and shifting food webs. Yet the goblin shark lineage persisted once again, carrying its distinctive anatomy through another chapter of planetary transformation with remarkably little apparent redesign. Today, that ancient blueprint continues almost unchanged. In the same deep water occupied by its distant ancestors, the goblin shark still advances with measured restraint, sensing weak electrical fields through its elongated snout before releasing the remarkable jaw mechanism that has defined its hunting strategy for an immense span of evolutionary time. Few living vertebrates provide such a direct connection between the present ocean and seas that existed long before familiar, modern animals evolved. Despite this ancient heritage, the living species remains exceptionally elusive. Fewer than 50 complete specimens have been documented scientifically, and nearly all reached researchers only because they were accidentally captured in deep-sea fishing nets or on long lines intended for entirely different animals. No aquarium has succeeded in keeping a goblin shark alive for any meaningful length of time. Nearly everything understood about its daily behavior comes from brief, unexpected encounters beneath the surface, combined with careful examination of preserved specimens. Even after 125 million years of uninterrupted survival, much of its ordinary existence continues unfolding beyond human observation, carried forward through the darkness, with the same enduring design that first emerged in the ancient seas of the Cretaceous world. A story can disappear without ever truly ending. Sometimes it simply slips beyond reach, leaving behind a single glimpse that lingers for generations before another appears. The goblin shark entered scientific history in much the same way, revealing itself only briefly before returning to the deep waters that had concealed its lineage for millions of years. In the year 1898, fishermen working off the coast of Yokohama, Japan, brought ashore a shark unlike any living species then known to science. Its elongated snout, pale body, and remarkable jaws seemed almost impossible beside the familiar forms of other sharks. The specimen soon reached the American ichthyologist David Starr Jordan, who formally described the animal and gave it the name Mitsukurina austoni. The name honored the Japanese marine biologist Kakichi Mitsukuri and the naturalist Alan Austin, whose efforts helped place the extraordinary specimen into scientific hands. Jordan immediately recognized that this unusual shark represented far more than a new species. Its anatomy echoed fossil sharks preserved in Cretaceous rocks, suggesting that an ancient branch of shark evolution had endured into the modern world with astonishing fidelity. Rather than standing at the end of a recent evolutionary experiment, the goblin shark appeared to carry forward a design whose roots stretched into an age when the continents themselves looked unfamiliar. After that first remarkable encounter, the trail seemed to vanish once again. Years passed with almost no additional evidence. The scarcity of specimens became so striking that some researchers wondered whether the original animal had been an exceptional survivor from a lineage nearing its final disappearance. Others questioned whether the species existed only in exceedingly small numbers, hidden within an environment that remained almost entirely inaccessible to scientific exploration. The ocean eventually answered those doubts, although only in scattered fragments. Additional goblin sharks were documented over time from widely separated regions of the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. Together, these discoveries revealed that the species possessed a broad, deep water distribution rather than belonging to a single isolated population. Yet the pattern of discovery never became predictable. Nearly every specimen appeared unexpectedly, caught by fishing operations pursuing entirely different animals or recovered through chance encounters rather than deliberate searches. This enduring elusiveness has become one of the defining characteristics of the species. Despite more than a century of marine exploration, no research expedition specifically organized to locate a goblin shark has successfully found one through planned searching alone. Human knowledge has continued growing through coincidence instead of certainty, as though the animal still moves according to rhythms, largely untouched by observation. Among the specimens recovered, size has varied considerably. Most documented individuals have been relatively modest in length, yet the largest reliably recorded goblin shark reached approximately 6.2 meters, which is about 20.3 feet. At that scale, the distinctive jaw projection becomes even more remarkable, transforming an already specialized feeding mechanism into one capable of extending across an impressive distance during a strike. The combination of ancient anatomy and considerable size places the species among the most unusual predators inhabiting the deep ocean. One extraordinary event briefly interrupted this long pattern of isolated encounters. During April in the year 2000, after a magnitude 7.9 earthquake occurred off Taiwan, more than 100 goblin sharks were accidentally captured when geological disturbance apparently displaced them into shallower waters. Never before had so many individuals been documented within such a short period. The event remains the largest simultaneous record of the species ever assembled, offering scientists an unusually broad glimpse into an animal that ordinarily reveals itself only one individual at a time. Even with that exceptional moment, the goblin shark remains defined by absence as much as presence. It emerges unexpectedly, leaves behind another valuable piece of its history, and then fades once more into the immense darkness below, where an ancient lineage continues its enduring passage beyond the ordinary reach of human eyes. Size can be a deceptive measure in the deep ocean. Some of its most effective predators occupy little space in the immense water around them, carrying adaptations that seem almost impossible when compared with the modest scale of their bodies. Among them drifts a fish whose entire anatomy appears to have surrendered itself to the demands of a single extraordinary weapon. The common fangtooth, known scientifically as Anaplogister cornuta, rarely grows beyond 16 to 18 centimeters, which is about 6.3 to 7.1 inches. Its body is compact, dark brown to nearly black, and covered with small, rough scales that offer little hint of its remarkable nature. Seen from a distance, it might pass unnoticed among countless other deep water fishes. Only when its mouth begins to open does its defining feature emerge into view. Those teeth are unlike any others found in the ocean. The two foremost fangs of the lower jaw are proportionally larger than those of any other known fish species. They are so long, relative to the skull that supports them, that ordinary anatomy would make them impossible to carry. Closing the mouth without special modifications would drive the teeth directly into the upper jaw and toward the brain itself. Evolution answered this problem by reshaping the skull rather than shortening the teeth. Within the roof of the mouth and along the side of the brain case lie dedicated recesses formed specifically to receive the lower fangs whenever the jaws close. Each tooth slides into its own protected space with remarkable precision. Bone, muscle, and connective tissue fit together like carefully crafted mechanical parts, allowing the mouth to seal completely while avoiding self-injury. The same structures that appear excessive at first glance become entirely practical when viewed through the demands of survival, where every successful meal may determine whether another follows days later. These formidable teeth serve a single purpose. They are not designed to slice, grind, or chew. Instead, they function as deeply penetrating hooks. When prey is caught between them, escape becomes exceedingly difficult because movement only drives the sharp points farther into soft tissue. Rather than relying upon repeated bites, the fangtooth depends upon immediate, secure capture. The initial strike accomplishes nearly everything required, allowing a comparatively small predator to restrain animals that might otherwise overpower it through strength alone. Its diet consists primarily of fishes and squid drifting through the surrounding darkness. Opportunities to feed arrive unpredictably, leaving little room for preference or waste. A meal too large to swallow immediately is not abandoned. Instead, the fangtooth maintains its grip with those immense fangs while consuming portions gradually, extracting as much nourishment as possible before releasing what remains. Every successful capture represents an investment that must yield the greatest possible return, reinforcing the same energetic discipline that shapes so many predators inhabiting these remote waters. Despite its fearsome appearance, the fangtooth is not a swift hunter. Its body reflects a conservative metabolism suited to an environment where unnecessary movement carries hidden costs. Rather than racing after fleeing prey, it spends long intervals suspended within the water column, advancing only when success appears likely. The oversized teeth compensate for limited speed, ensuring that the brief instant of contact is far more important than any prolonged pursuit. The story becomes even more unusual during the earliest stage of its life. Juvenile fangtooth fishes bear little resemblance to the adults they eventually become. Young individuals possess pale coloration, elongated spines projecting from the head, and teeth that appear comparatively modest beside those of mature animals. Their proportions differ so dramatically that naturalists once believed they represented entirely separate species. Only sustained observation revealed that these seemingly unrelated creatures belong to the same life cycle, transformed by growth into one of the ocean's most distinctive ambush hunters. In the deep sea, even identity can change beyond recognition, while the essential purpose remains exactly the same. Some creatures belong so completely to a single layer of the ocean that moving beyond it would mean death. Their bodies are tuned to one narrow band of pressure, temperature, and chemistry, leaving little room for change. The common fangtooth follows a different path. Carrying within its compact frame an unusual ability to inhabit a remarkable span of the deep sea. Verified specimens have been recovered from depths beginning around 200 meters, which is about 656 feet, and extending to nearly 4,900 meters, that is nearly 16,077 feet. Few ambush predators occupy such an extensive vertical range. From the fading boundary where the final usable sunlight disappears to the immense darkness resting above the ocean floor, the same predator continues its patient existence, adapting to conditions that would overwhelm many of its neighbors. This journey carries the fangtooth through environments that differ profoundly despite belonging to the same ocean. Near the upper limit of its range, the final traces of daylight still drift downward in weakened form, offering just enough illumination for faint silhouettes to emerge. Far below, that lingering brightness no longer exists. Pressure approaches nearly 500 atmospheres, while the surrounding water settles near 2 degrees Celsius or 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Although these conditions appear impossibly different, the fangtooth crosses them with a resilience that remains unusual among deep water fishes. Such flexibility depends upon anatomy refined over immense spans of evolutionary time. Many fishes living in shallower environments rely upon a swim bladder, a gas-filled organ that adjusts buoyancy by changing the volume of contained gas. Across the extraordinary pressure differences experienced by the fangtooth, such a structure would become an overwhelming liability. Gas compresses dramatically at depth and expands during ascent, threatening the stability of any animal depending upon it. The fangtooth has abandoned that solution entirely, avoiding the mechanical limits imposed by gas-filled organs. Instead, its body achieves neutral buoyancy through composition rather than inflation. A comparatively high proportion of water, combined with reduced amounts of dense tissue, allows the fish to remain suspended with minimal effort. It neither struggles constantly against sinking nor expends unnecessary energy maintaining position. The surrounding water supports much of its weight naturally, permitting long intervals of patient stillness before the brief motion of an attack. In a world where every movement carries an energetic cost, this economical design becomes another expression of the same survival strategy shared throughout the deep ocean. The benefits extend beyond simple efficiency. Ocean conditions do not remain perfectly constant across centuries, seasons, or even individual years. Layers rich in prey may shift upward or downward. Regions containing limited oxygen can expand into previously favorable habitat. Subtle changes in water temperature may alter where smaller animals gather. A predator confined to one narrow depth has little choice except to endure these changes. The fangtooth possesses another option. Its unusual tolerance allows it to move vertically through a broad portion of the ocean, following opportunity while avoiding conditions that no longer favor survival. This flexibility does not transform the fangtooth into a restless wanderer. Its movements remain measured, conserving energy whenever possible. Yet the ability to occupy multiple layers gives it an ecological resilience uncommon among specialized deep-sea predators. Rather than depending upon a single stable environment, it carries adaptations broad enough to function across habitats separated by thousands of meters. Beneath its formidable teeth and imposing appearance lies an animal shaped not only by the demands of capturing prey, but also by the necessity of enduring change. The common fangtooth survives across one of the widest documented depth ranges known for an ambush hunter, demonstrating that persistence in the deep sea is achieved not through speed or strength alone, but through a body capable of meeting the ocean wherever changing conditions invite it to remain. Not every hunter of the deep sea relies upon teeth that pierce or jaws that snap shut with force. Some succeed by abandoning the very idea of a conventional bite. In one remarkable lineage, nearly every feature of the body has been reduced so that one astonishing structure can grow beyond ordinary limits, transforming a modest fish into a living vessel built to receive whatever fortune places before it. The gulper eel, formerly known as Europharynx pelicanoides, appears almost unfinished at first glance. Its body is long, slender, and dark, tapering into a whip-like tail that trails behind with little apparent strength. Tiny eyes occupy a head that seems far too large for them, revealing how little vision contributes to its survival. Almost every anatomical investment has been directed elsewhere, toward a mouth so immense that the rest of the animal appears merely to support it. Approximately 1/4 of the gulper eel's total body length belongs to its jaws alone. Adults commonly measure between 60 and 80 centimeters, which is about 23.6 to 31.5 inches. Within an animal of those proportions, the mouth itself extends beyond 15 centimeters, which is about 5.9 inches, yet length tells only part of the story. The true marvel lies in the extraordinary capacity of that mouth to expand far beyond what its resting shape would ever suggest. Unlike the rigid jaws carried by many fishes, the lower jaw of the gulper eel is connected through loose, highly elastic tissues that allow dramatic movement without damaging the surrounding skeleton. Stretchable skin forms an enormous pouch beneath the head, remaining folded until the instant it is needed. During an attack, the jaws swing outward, while the pouch unfolds and expands like a broad, flexible bag filling with surrounding water. The transformation happens so completely that the animal seems to become a different creature within a single motion. This feeding strategy bears little resemblance to an ordinary bite. Rather than seizing prey between opposing rows of teeth, the gulper eel surrounds its target with an expanding chamber. As the mouth opens, the fish surges forward, just enough for the pouch to engulf both prey and a substantial volume of water. Once enclosed, the excess water escapes backward through the gills, while the captured animal remains inside the enormous mouth. The strike resembles the casting of a net far more than the closing of a trap. The remarkable flexibility continues beyond the jaws themselves. The stomach possesses similarly elastic walls, capable of stretching to accommodate unexpectedly large meals. Scientists have recovered gulper eels containing fishes, squid, and crustaceans whose combined mass exceeded the weight of the predator itself. Such extraordinary meals appear almost unbelievable until viewed within the context of an environment where opportunities arrive unpredictably and may remain absent for many days or even weeks. Across depths ranging from approximately 3,000 meters, that is nearly 9,843 feet, to 6,000 meters, which is about 19,685 feet. Encounters with suitable prey can be exceptionally uncommon. A predator equipped to consume only animals matching its own modest size would leave valuable nourishment behind whenever fortune delivered something larger. The gulper eel follows a different calculation. Any successful capture, whether small or unexpectedly immense, must provide the greatest possible return before another opportunity appears. Its appearance reflects that single biological priority. The body remains narrow, the muscles comparatively modest, and the eyes reduced because those features demand resources that can instead support the extraordinary feeding apparatus. Almost everything unnecessary has been minimized, so that the jaws and stomach may achieve astonishing proportions. In the immense darkness, where abundance is never guaranteed, the gulper eel survives through a simple principle carried to its ultimate conclusion: that the widest opportunity belongs to the mouth capable of accepting almost anything the deep sea chooses to offer. A faint point of living light drifts where almost nothing else can be seen. It does not belong to a drifting jelly, nor to a fragment descending from waters far above. It hangs with deliberate patience at the end of a remarkably long tail, suspended before a hunter that has transformed the last few centimeters of its body into an invitation. The gulper eel carries a slender, whip-like tail extending well beyond its narrow body. At the very tip rests a specialized organ capable of producing bioluminescent light. When inactive, this tiny beacon commonly glows with a soft pink hue. During more active displays, the color may shift toward deeper red or brighten toward pale white, creating subtle changes that stand apart against the surrounding darkness. The light itself requires remarkably little energy, yet it carries across a surprising distance in waters where even the smallest glow becomes impossible to ignore. Unlike many luminous structures that remain fixed in place, the glowing tip of the gulper eel's tail is highly mobile. Flexible muscles allow the tail to curl gracefully forward until the beacon hovers before the animal's head. At times, it may drift close to the enormous opening of the jaws, placing the source of illumination exactly where an approaching animal must travel if it wishes to investigate. The rest of the body remains almost motionless, allowing the moving light to become the only feature that captures attention. Direct observation of feeding behavior remains uncommon because encounters with living gulper eels are exceptionally rare. Even so, the arrangement of the luminous organ, its mobility, and its repeated positioning before the mouth have led marine researchers toward a compelling interpretation. The evidence strongly suggests that the glowing tail functions as a lure. Small fishes and crustaceans attracted by an isolated source of light approach what appears to be an opportunity. Instead, they move steadily toward the waiting jaws, concealed immediately behind the beacon. This arrangement transforms the gulper eel into a predator operating through two carefully connected stages. The first depends upon attraction rather than pursuit. The second depends upon the astonishing expansion of the mouth, already shaped for engulfment rather than biting. Curiosity draws the prey across the final distance. The enormous jaws then open into a broad elastic chamber that surrounds both the animal and the water around it. Excess water escapes through the gills, while the prey remains enclosed, completing a sequence that begins with a tiny point of light and ends within an immense living pouch. The light itself is created through one of nature's most elegant chemical processes. A light-producing compound called luciferin reacts with an enzyme called luciferase inside specialized cells. That reaction releases visible light while producing almost no heat. Scientists often describe this phenomenon as cold light because so little energy is wasted through warmth. In an environment where every reserve of energy carries tremendous value, such efficiency offers an extraordinary advantage. Modern human technology still struggles to equal the remarkable effectiveness of this natural system. Remotely operated vehicles exploring the deep ocean have recorded the glowing tail in action. During several encounters, the eel curled its tail forward, while the luminous organ pulsed with a measured rhythm before the head. No successful capture appeared within the recorded moments, yet the posture closely matched what marine biologists expected from an active luring display. The observations strengthened ideas that had previously rested upon anatomy alone, allowing behavior and structure to support one another. Bioluminescent signals across the deep sea are rarely random. Different species produce colors and intensities that correspond closely with the visual systems of the animals they encounter. The gulper eel appears to follow that same principle. Its luminous beacon is not merely decoration scattered into darkness. It is a carefully tuned message shaped by countless generations, carrying exactly the kind of invitation that nearby prey is most prepared to notice, while the immense jaws wait only a short distance beyond the glow. There are mouths that seize, and there are mouths that refuse to release. The black seadevil belongs to the latter, its entire feeding apparatus shaped around a single principle. Once life crosses the threshold, the journey leads only inward. The black seadevil, known scientifically as Melanocetus johnsonii, inhabits tropical and temperate oceans across the world. Verified encounters span depths from about 100 meters, which is about 328 feet, to nearly 4,500 meters, that is nearly 14,764 feet. Across this immense vertical range, its appearance changes very little. The body remains compact and almost spherical, wrapped in smooth black skin that reflects almost no light. Rather than resembling a stone, a drifting organism, or any familiar outline, the fish simply dissolves into the surrounding darkness until only its luminous lure suggests that anything occupies the water at all. Its teeth reveal a different strategy from many other deep-sea hunters. They are neither evenly spaced nor identical in length. Each tooth curves along a slightly different path, creating an irregular barrier that points steadily toward the throat. Instead of forming cutting edges or crushing surfaces, the entire arrangement functions as a living gate. Every tooth contributes to a passage designed for movement in only one direction. When a smaller fish approaches the glowing lure, it advances through the widening entrance of the jaws. Contact with the teeth produces remarkably little resistance because each tooth flexes inward as the prey moves deeper into the mouth. The path forward remains open. Attempting to reverse that movement creates an entirely different result. The backward pressure forces the curved teeth into the body of the struggling animal, transforming flexible barriers into rigid hooks. Every attempt at escape increases the number of contact points, making retreat progressively more difficult until it becomes mechanically impossible. This remarkable arrangement allows the black seadevil to rely upon patience rather than pursuit. There is no prolonged chase through open water, no expenditure of precious energy in repeated attacks. The prey supplies nearly all of the motion required for capture. The predator contributes only the lure, the waiting jaws, and a brief closing movement once the victim has crossed the invisible boundary marked by the inward-pointing teeth. The jaws themselves possess extraordinary flexibility. In preserved specimens, researchers have documented openings approaching a near-vertical position, allowing the mouth to spread to an astonishing size compared with the resting dimensions of the fish. Such expansion means the limiting factor is rarely the width of the mouth. Instead, success depends upon whether the prey can be guided fully beyond the cage of teeth before any attempt at retreat begins. Beyond the jaws lies an equally accommodating stomach. Elastic tissues stretch far beyond the body's ordinary proportions, creating space for meals that appear almost impossible when viewed beside the modest size of the predator itself. In one examined specimen, researchers discovered a fish compressed into the stomach in a broad curved shape, nearly twice the length of the black seadevil that had swallowed it. The meal folded naturally within the expandable chamber, demonstrating that the stomach grows around opportunity rather than restricting it. Every feature works toward the same economical design. The nearly invisible body conceals the hunter. The glowing lure invites investigation. The inward-pointing teeth eliminate, escape. The expanding jaws admit prey that seems impossibly large. The elastic stomach preserves the reward from encounters that may be separated by long intervals in the deep ocean, where successful meals arrive without warning and cannot be predicted. Nothing about the black seadevil suggests haste. It does not depend upon powerful bursts of speed or relentless endurance. Its greatest movement is often made by another creature. A distant shimmer becomes an object of curiosity. Curiosity becomes approach. Approach becomes entrapment. And the living cage closes without force, holding fast until every remaining motion grows still. For generations, the black seadevil existed more as an anatomical puzzle than as a living creature. Scientists examined preserved bodies lifted from tremendous depths, studying rigid jaws, collapsed tissues, and faded structures that hinted at a remarkable way of life. Yet the animal itself remained unseen in its natural world, as though it belonged more to museum drawers than to the ocean where it continued its patient existence. That changed during a remotely operated vehicle expedition conducted by the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute in November of 2014. The same exploration that revealed the first confirmed footage of a living deep-sea anglerfish also encountered something even more elusive, a living black seadevil, Melanocetus johnsonii, suspended within the open water at depth. Instead of arriving damaged inside a trawl net, it appeared exactly where evolution had shaped it to live, untouched by decompression and behaving without disturbance. The individual observed measured roughly 9 centimeters, which is about 3.5 inches, in body length. Rounded and compact, it drifted with an appearance unlike almost any other fish. Its dark skin absorbed nearly every trace of available light, reducing the body to little more than a faint outline surrounding a single luminous point. Rising from the top of the head, the slender fishing structure curved gracefully forward until the glowing lure rested before the waiting mouth. The tiny beacon pulsed with bioluminescent light, creating the only obvious feature within the surrounding darkness. Perhaps the most revealing discovery lay not in what the animal did, but in how little it needed to do. The black seadevil remained almost perfectly suspended in the water column. Minute movements of the pectoral fins corrected its position with extraordinary precision. The tail contributed only the slightest adjustments, never sweeping dramatically or driving sustained motion. Every visible action suggested an existence governed by careful conservation. The fish remained fully alert while expending scarcely more energy than was absolutely necessary to maintain its place within the water. Watching the living animal transformed decades of scientific interpretation. Earlier knowledge had depended almost entirely upon specimens altered by their journey to the surface. Delicate tissues collapsed under changing pressure, natural posture disappeared, and relationships between body parts could only be reconstructed through careful inference. The living black seadevil restored those missing connections. The position of the lure, the angle of the body, and the restrained movements of the fins all fit together into a coherent hunting strategy that preserved every possible reserve of energy. When the footage became available to the wider world, it quickly attracted international attention. Many viewers focused upon the extraordinary appearance of the fish itself. The rounded body, gleaming lure, and formidable teeth combined into an image that seemed almost impossible to believe. Yet beneath that unusual appearance rested a design shaped not for spectacle, but for efficiency. Every feature reflected the demands of an environment where successful encounters with prey might be separated by long intervals. For the researchers observing the animal, One detail proved especially valuable. Even while resting, the mouth remained slightly open, allowing the inward angled teeth to remain visible. The trap existed in a constant state of readiness. There was no need for elaborate preparation before a strike. The cage had already been assembled. Any prey crossing the threshold would immediately meet the same inward-pointing barrier documented from preserved specimens, now confirmed in a living individual behaving naturally. The encounter lasted only about 10 minutes. Those few minutes, which is about 600 seconds, resolved uncertainties that had endured since the species first entered scientific literature during the 19th century. At last, the black seadevil could be understood not merely through the stillness of preserved anatomy, but through the measured rhythm of a living hunter suspended within its enduring home. Some hunters measure success by the size of the animal they overpower. The cookiecutter shark follows an entirely different arithmetic. It asks for no complete victory, only a single mouthful, precisely removed, before disappearing once again into the immense darkness. Known scientifically as Cystius brasiliensis, the cookiecutter shark is remarkably small beside many of the creatures that carry its unmistakable signature. Adults generally reach between 42 and 56 centimeters, which is about 16.5 to 22 inches, making the shark shorter than the forearm of most adult people. Its modest size conceals an extraordinary feeding strategy, one that allows a predator no larger than a household loaf of bread to draw nourishment from some of the largest animals ever to inhabit the ocean. Rather than attempting to overpower prey, the cookiecutter shark searches for passing giants. Sperm whales, great white sharks, blue sharks, oceanic dolphins, tuna, and billfishes have all been documented bearing its characteristic wounds. A single encounter rarely proves fatal. Instead, the shark removes one circular plug of flesh measuring approximately 5 centimeters, which is about 2 inches, across and extending roughly 7 centimeters, that is nearly 2.8 inches, into the body. Having secured that single meal, it departs, leaving the much larger animal to continue its journey, carrying a distinctive scar. The mechanics behind this remarkable bite reveal an elegance shaped through millions of years of refinement. Thick, muscular lips form a powerful suction seal against the skin of the target. Once attached, the shark holds its position with remarkable stability despite the movement of the much larger animal beneath it. The upper jaw contributes by gripping firmly with numerous small pointed teeth, preventing the head from slipping while the rest of the feeding apparatus begins its work. The lower jaw performs an entirely different task. Instead of carrying isolated cutting teeth, it bears a continuous band of broad, interlocking blades. These teeth fit tightly together, forming what functions almost as a single, circular cutting edge. Maintaining its suction seal, the shark rotates its entire body around the fixed point of attachment. As the body turns, the lower teeth slice steadily through skin, connective tissue, and muscle. The suction holds the circular plug securely until the final fibers separate. Only then does the shark release its grip and drift away, carrying a complete portion of flesh. This combination of anchoring above and cutting below makes the two jaws partners rather than identical tools. Each performs a specialized role that the other cannot. Together, they create one of the most mechanically unusual feeding systems known among sharks, allowing a comparatively tiny predator to exploit prey many hundreds or even thousands of times larger than itself without prolonged struggle. Long before researchers witnessed this behavior directly, marine biologists recognized its results. Stranded whales and captured fishes repeatedly displayed nearly identical circular craters with smooth, curved edges. The wounds appeared so consistent that they became recognizable signatures, each one pointing toward an unseen predator operating far below the surface. Only later did direct observations and anatomical studies reveal the precise sequence of suction, rotation, cutting, and release responsible for producing those remarkably uniform marks. The lower teeth themselves possess another unusual distinction. Relative to body size, they are proportionally the largest teeth found in any shark species. Their significance lies not in length, but in breadth and arrangement. Working together as a unified cutting band, they accomplish a task impossible for isolated pointed teeth. Every successful feeding event depends upon their perfect alignment, transforming an otherwise ordinary bite into a remarkably efficient circular incision. The cookie-cutter shark neither pursues nor conquers the giants that pass through its realm. It waits for opportunity, removes exactly what it requires, and leaves behind a wound that tells the story long after the hunter itself has vanished into the darkness from which it came. Evidence sometimes arrives without a witness. Across the open ocean, enormous animals carried the same curious mark upon their bodies, a nearly perfect circle carved from skin and flesh with astonishing precision. For many years, the wound itself appeared long before anyone understood the remarkably small hunter responsible for creating it. During the 1970s, marine researchers examining sperm whales began recording these distinctive circular injuries with increasing frequency. Each scar possessed almost identical proportions. The diameter remained strikingly consistent from one whale to another, and the depth suggested a deliberate cutting action rather than tearing or scavenging. The remarkable regularity hinted that the cause was biological, yet no familiar predator seemed capable of producing such clean geometry. The mystery drifted through the scientific literature as carefully preserved observations accumulated one specimen after another. In 1971, marine biologist Everett Jones proposed an unexpected explanation. He suggested that the cookie-cutter shark, known scientifically as Cystius brasiliensis, possessed exactly the dental arrangement required to create these wounds. The proposal rested not upon direct observation, but upon anatomy. The shark's broad, interlocking lower teeth formed a continuous cutting band whose curvature closely matched the circular scars appearing on whales and other large marine animals. Its powerful suction lips completed the picture, providing a mechanism that could hold the shark firmly in place while the cutting jaw rotated beneath. Acceptance did not arrive immediately. Scientists demanded stronger evidence than resemblance alone. Over the following years, additional specimens were collected and examined with increasing care. Tooth spacing, jaw mechanics, wound dimensions, and the shape of healing scars all pointed toward the same conclusion. Without ever watching a single attack unfold in the open sea, researchers gradually assembled a compelling reconstruction from physical clues alone. The shark itself had become a biological detective story, understood through the traces it consistently left behind. As marine exploration expanded, the catalog of victims continued to grow. Sperm whales were joined by pygmy sperm whales, spinner dolphins, silky sharks, blue sharks, mako sharks, swordfish, wahoo, and numerous other large oceanic animals inhabiting tropical and subtropical waters. The diversity of wounded species revealed that the cookie-cutter shark was not specialized upon any single target. Instead, it exploited opportunity wherever large animals passed within reach, taking a modest portion before slipping back into the darkness. One of the most unexpected discoveries emerged far from marine biology laboratories. Engineers within the United States Navy reported an unusual problem involving submarines operating across the Pacific Ocean. Protective rubber coverings surrounding sonar domes repeatedly developed circular punctures that closely resembled the wounds observed on whales. Mechanical failure seemed unlikely because the damage displayed extraordinary consistency. Careful investigation eventually identified the same unlikely culprit. Cookiecutter sharks had begun biting the synthetic material, much as they bit living skin. The precise attraction remains uncertain. Some researchers have suggested that slight warmth produced by submarine equipment may have drawn the sharks closer. Others have considered whether acoustic signals or subtle electromagnetic activity contributed to the encounters. Whatever the reason, the feeding mechanism functioned with remarkable indifference to whether the surface beneath the suction lips belonged to a whale or a machine. The repeated damage ultimately encouraged replacement of vulnerable rubber coverings with fiberglass structures that proved far more resistant. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this entire story is how completely the attacks remain hidden from human sight. No confirmed recording has captured a cookiecutter shark removing its characteristic plug of flesh from a whale swimming freely through the ocean. Nearly everything understood about this behavior has emerged through forensic reconstruction. Circular wounds upon living animals, scars preserved upon stranded bodies, distinctive bite marks impressed into submarine coverings, and the extraordinary anatomy of a modest shark have together formed a complete narrative. In the immense darkness below, the hunter performs its work beyond observation, while the evidence continues its long journey upward to the surface. Far beneath the waves, where the last traces of daylight dissolve into a dim green veil, appearance becomes a language of survival. In that realm, light is seldom used to reveal a hunter. More often, it conceals one. The cookiecutter shark has refined this principle into one of the most unusual hunting strategies found anywhere in the ocean, relying not upon speed or strength, but upon an illusion crafted from darkness and living light. The underside of the cookiecutter shark is covered with thousands of tiny light-producing organs known as photophores. Together, they generate a soft greenish glow that closely matches the faint illumination filtering downward from the distant surface. To an animal looking upward, the shark's glowing underside blends into the background, dissolving its outline against the weak overhead light. This strategy, known as counter-illumination, is shared by several deep ocean hunters because it allows them to disappear not through color, but through carefully matched brightness. Yet one part of the body refuses to join the illusion. Around the throat and gill region lies a distinct dark band that contains no glowing organs at all. Against the luminous underside, this narrow region remains plainly visible. Rather than disrupting the camouflage, the contrast creates a remarkably convincing shape. Seen from below, the glowing body fades into the surrounding water, while the darker patch resembles the compact outline of a much smaller fish or squid suspended above. Researchers have proposed that this feature serves as an extraordinary form of aggressive mimicry. The evidence comes from the position of the dark patch, its consistent appearance across examined specimens, and the feeding behavior of the shark itself. Instead of advertising the entire animal, the glowing body effectively erases its true form, while the unlit band presents what appears to be an isolated morsel drifting through the water. The deception is aimed not at small creatures searching for shelter, but at predators searching for food. A large hunter passing through the darkness detects what seems to be an easy opportunity. Sperm whales, powerful sharks, tuna, and other swift ocean travelers routinely investigate small prey. Their approach is driven by instincts refined across countless generations. They close the distance, expecting a simple meal. The cookie-cutter shark remains almost motionless until the larger animal comes within reach. Only then does the encounter reverse. Thick suction lips secure the shark against its enormous visitor. The specialized lower teeth remove their familiar circular plug of flesh, and the entire exchange ends almost as quickly as it began. Before the larger animal can react, the tiny predator has already withdrawn into the surrounding darkness. Within this remarkable strategy lies a reversal rarely encountered in nature. The shark does not pursue creatures smaller than itself. It encourages vastly larger animals to initiate the encounter. Their own hunting behavior becomes the mechanism that delivers them into contact with the waiting shark. Every successful approach made by the larger predator completes the first half of the cookie-cutter's feeding sequence without requiring the smaller animal to spend valuable energy in pursuit. This unusual arrangement reflects the realities of life in the open ocean, where encounters between animals may be separated by long stretches of empty water. A predator that depends upon chasing prey risks wasting precious energy. A predator that persuades its meal to arrive voluntarily avoids that expense almost entirely. The cookie-cutter shark accomplishes this through anatomy, bioluminescence, and timing rather than speed or physical dominance. Among the many remarkable hunters hidden within the deep ocean, the cookie-cutter shark stands apart because it overturns ordinary expectations. It is small where others are immense, measured where others rely upon force, and successful against animals that conventional reasoning would place far above it in the food web. The larger hunter believes it has discovered an effortless meal. In the brief instant that follows, the roles exchange without warning, leaving only a perfectly circular mark as evidence that the smallest figure in the encounter was guiding it from the beginning. Motion is often mistaken for life at its fullest, yet the deep ocean follows a different arithmetic. There, survival is measured not by constant activity, but by the remarkable ability to remain prepared while expending almost nothing. Every hunter encountered along this journey has shared that uncommon discipline. Each appears almost suspended within the water, though beneath that outward calm, an immense amount of biological work continues without interruption. Waiting in the deep sea is not equivalent to rest as it is understood in the shallow world. Every passing moment demands continual regulation of circulation, balance, sensation, and cellular chemistry. Eyes, when useful, continue searching. Electrical receptors remain alert to faint signals. Muscles preserve posture with delicate adjustments. The nervous system continues evaluating the surrounding darkness, prepared to transform long patience into a single, decisive movement. The body never truly disengages. It simply performs its tasks with extraordinary economy. The environment itself makes such efficiency essential. At a depth of 2,000 meters, which is about 1,243 miles below the surface, the surrounding pressure reaches approximately 200 atmospheres, nearly 200 times greater than the pressure experienced at sea level. Descend to 4,000 meters, that is nearly 2,485 miles below the surface, and the pressure doubles again to roughly 400 atmospheres. Conditions like these would compress gas-filled structures, alter the shape of delicate proteins, and interfere with the flexible membranes surrounding ordinary cells. Most shallow water animals could not continue functioning under such immense force. Deep sea predators endure because nearly every level of their biology has been shaped for these conditions. Their proteins possess structures that continue folding correctly despite relentless pressure. Their cellular membranes contain higher proportions of unsaturated fatty acids, preserving the flexibility needed for communication between cells, even when the surrounding water presses from every direction. Rather than resisting the environment through strength alone, their chemistry has become compatible with it, allowing ordinary biological processes to continue where they otherwise would fail. Temperature deepens the challenge. Most habitats below 1,000 meters, which is about 3,281 feet, remain between 2 degrees Celsius or 36 degrees Fahrenheit and 4 degrees Celsius or 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Such cold greatly slows the pace of chemical reactions that sustain every living creature. Deep-sea predators compensate through specialized enzymes that remain highly effective despite the chill. These biological catalysts perform the same essential tasks found in relatives inhabiting warmer seas, yet their structures have gradually adapted to maintain useful reaction speeds under conditions that would leave ordinary enzymes working with far less efficiency. Energy conservation extends beyond chemistry into every aspect of daily existence. Metabolic rates remain remarkably low, allowing these hunters to survive extended intervals with only minimal nourishment. A successful capture does not merely provide food for the present day. It may sustain the animal through many days, sometimes even weeks, while another opportunity slowly approaches through the vast darkness. Every unnecessary movement would consume precious reserves that cannot be replaced easily in an environment where encounters with prey are unpredictable. This remarkable restraint was illustrated by observations of the black seadevil recorded during a remotely operated vehicle expedition. Throughout approximately 10 minutes of observation, the animal remained almost perfectly suspended within the water. Tiny fin movements corrected its position with delicate precision, while the rest of the body scarcely shifted at all. Researchers estimated that during those 10 minutes, the animal expended only about the same amount of energy contained within a single burning match. Even while remaining fully alert to its surroundings, the cost of existence had been reduced to an extraordinary minimum. Such remarkable frugality is not evidence of limitation. It is the defining advantage of life, where abundance never arrives. In the deep ocean, the hunter, capable of surviving the longest between meals, possesses a strength no sudden burst of speed can equal, transforming patience itself into one of evolution's most enduring achievements. Darkness is often imagined as the absence of communication, yet the deep ocean tells a different story. Beneath the reach of sunlight, messages continue to pass constantly from one living creature to another. They are written not with sound or color as they are near the surface, but with flashes, glows, pulses, and carefully controlled patterns of living light. In this hidden realm, illumination has become one of evolution's most widely shared forms of expression. A comprehensive study published during the year 2020 examined extensive recordings gathered by remotely operated vehicles exploring the deep sea. Led by marine biologists Edith Witter and Stephen Haddock, the research concluded that approximately 76% of deep-sea organisms are capable of producing bioluminescence in some form. Within the twilight waters and the deeper regions beyond, generating light is no longer an unusual adaptation. It has become the ordinary condition from which countless ecological relationships begin. The remarkable hunters encountered throughout this journey all participate in that luminous conversation. The anglerfish extends its glowing lure before an almost motionless body. The viperfish carries rows of light-producing organs that soften its outline against the faint glow filtering from above. The gulper eel curls its illuminated tail toward its waiting mouth. The black seadevil suspends its radiant lure within the surrounding darkness. Even the cookiecutter shark, whose hunting strategy depends upon deception rather than pursuit, surrounds itself with a carefully controlled field of light that conceals its true shape while emphasizing a single misleading silhouette. Although these animals belong to very different branches of the evolutionary tree, the chemistry responsible for their glow follows the same elegant principle. A compound called luciferin reacts in the presence of an enzyme known as luciferase. During that reaction, energy is released as visible light while producing almost no wasted heat. Unlike an ordinary flame, which loses much of its energy through warmth, biological light operates with extraordinary efficiency. Every photon becomes useful, an important advantage in an environment where unnecessary energy expenditure carries a significant cost. Perhaps even more remarkable than the chemistry itself is the number of times evolution has discovered it independently. Scientists estimate that bioluminescence has arisen on more than 40 separate occasions across the history of life. Bacteria, fungi, squid, jellyfish, crustaceans, fishes, and many other organisms developed light-producing systems without inheriting them from a single glowing ancestor. Again and again, different evolutionary paths arrived at strikingly similar solutions whenever life entered places where darkness dominated the landscape. This repeated convergence has led many researchers to regard bioluminescence as one of evolution's most consistently favored answers to a recurring challenge. Whenever an organism requires light for attracting prey, avoiding predators, communicating with companions, disguising its outline, or confusing an approaching hunter, natural selection repeatedly uncovers the same biochemical strategy. Different creatures begin with different bodies and different histories, yet they arrive at nearly identical principles because those principles continue proving remarkably effective. Color also carries meaning beneath the waves. Most deep-sea bioluminescence appears blue-green because those wavelengths travel farther through seawater than almost any other visible light. Signals can therefore remain detectable across greater distances while using comparatively little energy. A smaller group of species produces red light instead. Because red wavelengths are absorbed rapidly by seawater and remain invisible to many deep-sea animals, this unusual color functions almost like a private conversation. The cookiecutter shark relies upon green illumination that potential targets can perceive, while the dragonfish projects red light that reveals prey without announcing its presence to nearly everything around it. Edith Witter has described the deep ocean as an alien communication system whose luminous vocabulary humanity is only beginning to understand. Every pulse, every glow, every carefully timed flash belongs to a language refined across immense spans of evolutionary history. Long before human eyes descended into these waters, the darkness had already become filled with conversation, and nearly every living creature had learned to speak in light. Across immense spans of evolutionary history, the deep ocean has conducted countless biological experiments. Different families of fish entered its darkness from different ancestors at different moments and along different coastlines of the ancient world. Their beginnings had little in common beyond a gradual descent into an environment where food was scarce, movement was expensive, and every successful capture carried extraordinary value. Yet over time, those separate journeys began to drift toward remarkably similar destinations. The anglerfish, the gulper eel, the viperfish, the black seadevil, the fangtooth, the goblin shark, and the cookiecutter shark did not inherit their hunting methods from one ancient ambush predator. Their evolutionary branches separated tens of millions of years before many of these specialized traits appeared. Each lineage continued adapting in relative isolation, shaped by different histories and different anatomical foundations. Even so, the challenges presented by the deep sea remained strikingly alike, and those shared challenges repeatedly encouraged the emergence of comparable solutions. The glowing lure of the anglerfish and the luminous structures carried by the viperfish provide a clear example. Their last common ancestor possessed neither feature. One lineage transformed a modified spine into an illuminated fishing rod suspended before the mouth. Another developed rows of light producing organs combined with a glowing structure that enhanced its approach through darkness. The anatomy differs, the developmental pathway differs, and the evolutionary history differs. Only the destination appears familiar, because creating light where no sunlight exists repeatedly proves useful for attracting life that would otherwise remain beyond reach. A similar pattern appears in the remarkable feeding structures of the goblin shark and the gulper eel. At first glance, both seem capable of extending far beyond the ordinary limits of a fish's mouth, yet the engineering behind each design follows entirely different principles. The goblin shark relies upon highly specialized ligaments, muscles, and movable jaw elements that launch forward during the final instant of a strike. The gulper eel depends instead upon loose skin, a simplified skeletal framework, and an enormous expandable pouch that surrounds whatever lies before it. Different materials, different mechanics, yet both accomplish the same essential purpose of reaching prey that would otherwise escape a conventional bite. Even the formidable teeth of the fangtooth and the black seadevil reveal another independent convergence. Their inward-facing arrangements were not inherited from a shared ancestor possessing the same dental architecture. Each lineage gradually assembled its own version of a one-way barrier that favors entry while resisting escape. Once prey crosses that threshold, every movement backward strengthens the trap instead of weakening it. Evolution arrived at the same functional geometry through separate histories because the underlying problem demanded an equally dependable answer. Evolutionary biology describes this repeated pattern with the term convergent evolution. Whenever unrelated organisms occupy environments that impose nearly identical demands, natural selection often guides them towards similar adaptations despite their separate ancestry. To researchers, such convergence serves as powerful evidence that the environment itself is shaping the boundaries of possibility. There may be countless ways for life to begin, yet only a limited collection of strategies consistently succeeds under the same physical constraints. The deep sea applies those constraints with remarkable consistency. Sunlight fades away, encounters between predator and prey become infrequent, swimming long distances wastes precious energy. A failed attack may represent the loss of days or even weeks of opportunity. Within those conditions, dependable solutions appear again and again. Produce your own light when darkness conceals everything. Spend as little energy as possible while waiting. Build a mouth capable of accepting rare opportunities regardless of their size. Ensure that once prey is captured, escape becomes almost impossible. Seen together, these creatures resemble variations on a single enduring idea rather than unrelated curiosities. Across millions of years, evolution repeatedly discovered that the same conditions favor the same broad designs. The resemblance between them is therefore not an accident of appearance, but a record of persistent natural forces shaping independent lives toward common answers. Until the darkness itself became the architect they all unknowingly shared. Even after centuries of exploration, The deep ocean continues to hold more unanswered pages than completed ones. Every chart, every expedition, and every remarkable discovery exists within a landscape that remains only partially understood. The predators already known to science may appear extraordinary, yet they occupy only the fraction of the abyss that human observation has managed to illuminate. Beyond that narrow window lies an expanse where familiar maps gradually dissolve into broad outlines and educated estimates. As of 2024, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration estimated that roughly 80 to 95% of the ocean floor had not yet been mapped in high resolution. Much of the seafloor has been surveyed only in coarse detail, revealing the broad shape of mountains, valleys, and plains while concealing the finer features that define living habitats. At comparable detail, the surface of Mars is in many places better resolved than vast regions beneath Earth's oceans. The planet beneath the waves remains, in many respects, a frontier observed from remarkable distance. The creatures described throughout this journey were rarely discovered because someone went looking for them specifically. More often, they appeared unexpectedly, lifted from great depth by commercial fishing equipment, recovered from scientific sampling gear, or recorded by remotely operated vehicles that happened to cross their path. Their first encounters with science were accidents shaped by persistence rather than prediction. Entire careers have advanced because a net surfaced, carrying an unfamiliar animal, or because a camera paused at precisely the right moment before continuing into darkness. The ocean itself is far from uniform. Beneath the surface stretches a landscape of astonishing variety. Mountain chains rise higher than many ranges found upon land. Vast volcanic provinces release heat from deep within the planet. Cold seeps nourish unusual communities through chemical energy rather than sunlight. Hydrothermal vents surround themselves with life unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Immense abyssal plains continue for thousands of kilometers, that is nearly 621 miles, with subtle variations that gradually reshape the animals able to survive there. Every distinct habitat applies its own evolutionary pressures, encouraging solutions that may exist nowhere else. An illustration of this hidden diversity emerged during an expedition near the Ningaloo Canyons off the coast of Western Australia. In waters that had received relatively little scientific attention, researchers encountered a siphonophore estimated to measure about 45 meters, that is nearly 148 feet in length. It may represent the longest animal ever documented. It had occupied navigable ocean throughout countless seasons, unnoticed until a single expedition happened to pass nearby. Its existence served as a reminder that extraordinary discoveries do not always require impossible destinations. Sometimes they simply require looking where almost nobody has looked before. That realization naturally reshapes expectations about the predators that still await discovery. If an animal extending nearly the length of a city street could remain undocumented until recent years, then unfamiliar ambush hunters possessing feeding structures, sensory systems, or behaviors beyond present imagination become not extravagant fantasy, but an outcome that statistics alone make increasingly plausible. Evolution has spent millions of years conducting experiments across habitats that remain only briefly sampled by human observers. One of the richest collections of deep ocean imagery belongs to the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. Even within that enormous archive of remotely operated vehicle observations, researchers regularly encounter animals that cannot immediately be assigned to a known species. Occasionally, they observe organisms that resist placement within any recognized family until further investigation can be completed. Each unidentified form suggests that the catalog of ocean life remains incomplete, despite decades of careful work. The celebrated expedition during 2014 that revealed the first confirmed footage of a living black seadevil also offers a fitting reflection. The dive had not been planned around finding that remarkable fish. The vehicle entered the water with different objectives, followed its intended course, and encountered an animal that transformed scientific understanding simply because it happened to be there. The deep ocean continues to reveal itself in much the same way, offering its greatest discoveries not as predictable destinations, but as unexpected meetings with a world that still keeps most of its stories beneath the reach of every map. No predator writes its story alone. Every adaptation that grants an advantage also creates pressure upon the animals it hunts, and those survivors carry their own successful traits into the next generation. Across immense spans of time, hunter and hunted become partners in a continuous exchange, each shaping the future of the other without intention or awareness. The deep ocean is filled with these invisible conversations, written not in words but in inherited anatomy, altered senses, and refined behavior. The ambush predators encountered throughout this journey did not simply become more effective while their prey remained unchanged. Every successful strike removed certain individuals from the population while sparing others that possessed even slight advantages. Those survivors reproduced, passing forward characteristics that improved the chances of escaping the next encounter. Generation after generation, the balance shifted in tiny increments, accumulating into remarkable biological innovations that reflect millions of years of steady selection. Bioluminescent deception illustrates this relationship especially well. Light serves as invitation, camouflage, distraction, and disguise. Yet it also provides information to eyes capable of interpreting subtle irregularities. Some deep-sea fishes appear able to recognize interruptions within glowing backgrounds, detecting places where an expected pattern of illumination suddenly changes. Such sensitivity may reveal the dark throat band carried by the cookiecutter shark, transforming what appears convincing to one species into a warning for another. Other fishes seem especially responsive to the particular colors and intensities associated with glowing lures, allowing hesitation or escape before drifting fully within striking distance. Physical defenses have advanced along similar paths. Predators equipped with inward-angled teeth benefit from prey that cannot easily pull away, yet many potential victims carry structures that complicate capture even after the initial strike succeeds. Rigid spines project outward at critical moments, making swallowing far more difficult. Thickened scales provide protection against puncture while distributing force across broader surfaces. Flexible bodies compress and twist through surprisingly narrow gaps, reducing the ability of cage, like jaws, to establish a secure hold. None of these features guarantees survival, but each slightly alters the odds in favor of another opportunity to reproduce. Speed has also evolved in unexpected ways. Within the dim waters inhabited by the viperfish, survival often depends upon reacting before conscious awareness has time to assemble a complete picture. Certain mesopelagic fishes display rapid escape responses that appear linked to sudden changes in surrounding light produced by glowing organs. The movement begins almost immediately after visual stimulation reaches the nervous system. Instead of evaluating the threat in detail, the body launches into motion through deeply rooted reflexes, carrying the fish beyond the narrow space where the predator expected its meal to remain. Every improvement among prey introduces fresh challenges for the hunters. A lure that becomes easier to recognize loses effectiveness. A jaw that struggles against armored scales favors stronger muscles or different angles of attack. Escape responses encourage greater precision and faster timing. Natural selection, therefore, continues operating on both sides simultaneously, refining predator and prey through the same unending process. Neither gains permanent superiority, because every successful innovation eventually becomes part of the environment, confronting the other. This continuing exchange is often described as an evolutionary arms race, although the contest has no finish and no lasting champion. It unfolds across millions of years rather than seasons, measured through gradual shifts in anatomy instead of sudden victories. Each generation inherits the outcome of countless encounters that occurred long before it existed, carrying forward both triumphs and failures in the form of living biology. Seen from that wider perspective, the remarkable hunters explored throughout this story are not final creations perfected beyond improvement. They represent only the present chapter within a much older narrative. Their prey is still changing beside them, just as it always has been, ensuring that every glowing lure, expanding jaw, hidden tooth, and fleeting escape remains part of a living balance that continues to reshape the deep ocean with every passing generation. Seen from the surface, the creatures that inhabit the deepest waters appear to invite familiar judgments. Teeth that curve inward, like the bars of a cage, jaws that unfold beyond ordinary proportion, glowing lures that promise safety before delivering capture, and a shark that removes a perfect circle of flesh from an animal many times its own size, all seem to belong beneath words such as brutal, monstrous, or violent. Those descriptions arise naturally from human experience, yet they belong to a world very different from the one these animals inhabit. The deep ocean follows rules shaped by scarcity rather than abundance. Food is uncertain, movement is expensive, and every unnecessary action carries a measurable cost. There are no overflowing opportunities to replace wasted effort. A failed strike may represent the loss of precious energy that cannot be recovered until another chance appears, perhaps many days or even weeks later. In such a place, survival favors neither spectacle nor aggression for its own sake. It favors reliability, restraint, and the careful conservation of every available resource. Natural selection does not reward appearances. It does not preserve an adaptation because it seems elegant or intimidating. It preserves only those features that return more energy than they consume over countless generations. Any structure that demands excessive investment while providing little advantage gradually disappears from the lineage that carries it. What remains has been tested repeatedly by an environment that offers almost nothing without exacting a price in return. The remarkable jaw of the goblin shark illustrates this principle with remarkable clarity. Its sudden extension is not an extravagant invention created to astonish an observer. It is simply the least expensive mechanical solution that allows prey to be captured without the prolonged effort of pursuit. The fangtooth carries enormous teeth, not because evolution favors excess, but because those teeth secure struggling prey immediately, reducing the likelihood that a rare opportunity escapes into darkness. Every fraction of saved energy contributes to survival in ways that become significant across millions of years. The cookiecutter shark reaches a similar destination through an entirely different strategy. Rather than attempting to overpower an immense whale or another large traveler, it removes only a small portion before departing. The exchange is brief, predictable, and remarkably economical. The host survives, the shark receives nourishment, and neither participant expends more energy than necessary. From a human viewpoint, the wound appears severe, Yet within the accounting system imposed by the deep sea, it represents an efficient transfer of calories accomplished with minimal effort. Even the glowing signals carried by so many predators reflect the same underlying pattern. Producing light requires energy, yet drifting endlessly in search of prey demands far more. A carefully placed lure invites food to approach instead of requiring the hunter to travel great distances. Motion is replaced by patience, and expenditure is exchanged for precision. The surrounding darkness has not encouraged cruelty, it has encouraged solutions that reduce waste wherever possible. Across this hidden realm, every successful adaptation resembles the answer to a difficult calculation. The conditions establish the limits. Pressure, cold, distance, and scarcity define the boundaries within which life must operate. Evolution does not anticipate the future or design with intention. It gradually preserves combinations that solve the problem more effectively than those that came before. Over immense spans of time, those solutions become bodies, behaviors, and instincts that appear astonishing only because they answer questions unlike those faced anywhere near the sunlit surface. What seems harsh through human eyes, therefore, belongs to a different measure entirely. The deep sea does not reward excess, malice, or spectacle. It rewards balance between cost and return, allowing only those designs that spend almost nothing while wasting even less. In that vast economy of darkness, efficiency becomes the closest thing nature has to mercy, and survival is written not through violence alone, but through the careful arithmetic of life enduring where almost nothing can be spared. There is a curious imbalance at the heart of deep ocean science. These animals are alive today, swimming beneath waters that cover most of our planet, yet many remain less familiar to researchers than creatures that vanished long before the first human ever looked toward the sea. Their world exists beside our own, but it has yielded only scattered moments of observation, each one gathered through remarkable effort and extraordinary fortune. The goblin shark offers perhaps the clearest example. No healthy individual has ever been observed living naturally within its own environment for an extended period. Every specimen that has shaped scientific understanding arrived unexpectedly, brought to the surface by fishing equipment after spending its life beyond ordinary reach. The famous extending jaws, the proportions of the head, the arrangement of muscles and ligaments, and the likely sequence of its strike all emerge from careful reconstruction. Anatomy has become the language through which behavior is imagined, because behavior itself has almost never been witnessed. The fangtooth has appeared before remotely operated vehicles, drifting through darkness, yet these encounters usually reveal little beyond posture and presence. The animal hangs in the water, maintaining position with restrained movements while offering researchers a rare opportunity to study its form. The decisive instant when prey enters reach, when those remarkable teeth close around a meal, remains almost entirely absent from the scientific record. The hunter is known far more clearly than the hunt. The life of the anglerfish contains another remarkable absence. Researchers understand that the tiny male eventually attaches himself permanently to the female, their tissues joining until separate bodies become a shared biological system. Yet the sequence leading to that extraordinary union has never been recorded from beginning to end. No camera has captured the search, the first bite, the gradual fusion, or the complete transformation. Instead, knowledge has accumulated from preserved specimens carrying attached males, each body preserving the final result while leaving the preceding moments hidden beyond observation. Even the immense nightly movement performed by the viperfish has been assembled through indirect evidence rather than uninterrupted viewing. Specimens collected near the surface after sunset and others gathered far below during daylight establish a consistent pattern of vertical migration spanning approximately 1,000 meters. That is nearly 3,281 feet. The conclusion is strongly supported, yet no observer has remained beside a single animal throughout that entire ascent and descent. The journey itself remains concealed between separate pieces of evidence joined through careful reasoning. This pattern extends throughout the study of the deep ocean. Understanding grows from preserved bodies recovered in nets, from acoustic transmitters attached briefly before an animal disappears forever into darkness, and from remotely operated vehicles whose cameras may remain within a habitat for only a few fleeting minutes before returning to the surface. Those minutes become treasured records because they illuminate places that may continue unchanged for countless generations before another expedition passes through the same water. The celebrated observation of the living black seadevil during 2014 illustrates how precious such encounters truly are. Roughly 10 minutes of uninterrupted footage transformed understanding of an animal belonging to a lineage that has endured for tens of millions of years. A span of observation shorter than an ordinary conversation became one of the most important behavioral records ever collected for an entire branch of deep ocean life. Perhaps that is what makes these witnesses so unusual. Human technology can descend into these depths, illuminate them briefly, and return carrying fragments of a story. Then the lights vanish, the machines rise, and the animals continue lives that unfold almost entirely beyond human attention. In a remarkable reversal of expectation, science often possesses richer behavioral reconstructions for extinct dinosaurs, whose final days ended during the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction approximately 66 million years ago, than for living hunters still moving through Earth's deepest waters at this very moment. The greatest mystery is therefore not that these creatures exist, but that their lives have unfolded beside humanity for so long while remaining almost entirely beyond our sight. Some places preserve stone, others preserve ice, and a few preserve fragments of memory. The deepest ocean preserves something far more unusual. It carries forward living designs that first appeared unimaginably long ago, allowing ancient lineages to continue their journey through time, while countless others vanished from the history of life. The darkness has not frozen evolution. It has simply allowed certain successful answers to remain relevant for spans of time that are difficult to comprehend. The goblin shark belongs to a lineage reaching back approximately 125 million years. Relatives of the viperfish extend beyond 100 million years, while the essential body form of the fangtooth has endured across tens of millions of years with only gradual refinement. These animals are not fossils lingering beyond their proper age. They are living participants in the present, carrying biological strategies that have continued to function through immense stretches of planetary history. Every generation has met the demands of its environment well enough to leave descendants, allowing the experiment to continue without interruption. Meanwhile, the waters nearer the surface have experienced repeated upheaval. Continents shifted, climates warmed and cooled, coastlines transformed, and the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction reshaped ecosystems across the globe approximately 66 million years ago. More recently, intensive human activity has altered fisheries, food webs, and habitats across vast regions of the upper ocean. Each transformation created fresh evolutionary pressures, rewarding new adaptations while rendering others obsolete. Survival depended upon continual adjustment to changing circumstances. Far below those restless layers, change arrived more gradually. Pressure remained immense. Temperatures commonly lingered near 2 degrees Celsius or 36 degrees Fahrenheit to 4 degrees Celsius or 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Sunlight never penetrated. Food continued to arrive sparingly from above or emerge through isolated geological processes. Because the fundamental conditions remained remarkably consistent across immense intervals of time, organisms already well suited to that environment encountered little pressure, demanding complete redesign. Evolution continued its patient work, refining details while leaving successful foundations intact. The goblin shark therefore survived not because the deep ocean favored ancient creatures out of any special generosity, but because its unusual anatomy already solved the challenges imposed by that environment. Its projecting jaws remained effective. Its sensory systems continued to locate prey. Its body required no dramatic transformation because the world surrounding it asked essentially the same questions, generation after generation. Stability became the condition under which persistence was possible. The same principle extends beyond individual species. The remarkable jaws that unfold beyond ordinary reach, the inward-pointing teeth that prevent escape, the glowing lures suspended before waiting mouths, and the stomachs, capable of accepting astonishingly large meals, are not the only solutions evolution ever attempted. Across hundreds of millions of years, countless alternative designs almost certainly appeared, flourished briefly, and disappeared forever. The forms that endure today represent those that continued returning more energy than they consumed within one of the most demanding environments on Earth. Their continued existence is evidence of long-tested success rather than extraordinary novelty. Seen together, these survivors transform the meaning of the deep sea itself. It resembles less a wilderness filled with random curiosities than an immense archive whose volumes have accumulated over geological ages. Each lineage preserves a different chapter describing how life solved a particular challenge under darkness, pressure, and scarcity. Most of those chapters remain unopened because so few observations have ever been gathered from their world. The inhabitants continue writing new pages every day without any audience to witness them. Perhaps that is the deepest significance of this hidden realm. It does not merely shelter unusual animals. It safeguards enduring biological ideas, allowing them to persist long after comparable experiments elsewhere have concluded. Beneath the changing surface of Earth, where ancient designs continue their measured passage through time, the ocean keeps an archive still being written, one living lineage at a time. There is a thread connecting every hunter encountered along this journey, and it is not found in teeth, light, or remarkable jaws. It is found in the discipline of waiting. Across millions of years, beneath waters untouched by daylight, these animals have perfected a state that most forms of life struggle to sustain. They remain prepared without wasting themselves. They hold position without surrendering awareness. They spend almost nothing until the exact instant when everything must happen at once. The anglerfish does not wander through darkness hoping that chance will reward effort. The goblin shark does not roam endlessly across the seafloor in search of opportunity. The viperfish does not exhaust itself through constant pursuit. Each has arrived at the same conclusion through a different evolutionary path. Motion is expensive. Patience is economical. A single precise action, separated by long intervals of restraint, returns more than countless unsuccessful attempts ever could. Once the brief moment has passed, the waiting begins again with the same measured steadiness. What appears motionless from the outside is never an absence of life. Muscles remain prepared. Sensory organs continue gathering information. The body balances itself against currents almost too subtle to notice. Countless internal processes continue their careful work while consuming remarkably little energy. Readiness exists without haste. Awareness continues without agitation. The result is a form of presence unlike the restless alertness familiar to creatures living beneath the changing sky. Perhaps that quality reaches beyond biology because it resembles another condition known throughout human experience. Near the edge of sleep, awareness often becomes lighter without disappearing entirely. Sounds grow more distant, thoughts lose their urgency, and the body gradually releases the constant expectation of immediate action. Nothing has been abandoned, nothing has ceased. Instead, attention settles into a gentler rhythm that asks almost nothing while remaining capable of responding should the world require it. The resemblance is imperfect, yet it echoes across an immense distance, separating human life from the deepest ocean. Long before the first person imagined the hidden world beneath the waves, the inhabitants of those depths had already mastered this rhythm. A fangtooth suspended at approximately 4,000 meters, which is about 13,123 feet, has maintained its patient existence under crushing pressure through countless generations. Its ancestors practiced the same restrained economy long before human language, long before written history, and long before any observer possessed the technology needed to descend into that realm. The behavior endured because it continued to succeed, requiring no audience to justify its existence. There is a certain humility within that realization. Human knowledge has expanded enormously, yet the deep sea continues its ancient routines whether observed or ignored. Predators wait, prey pass through darkness. Rare encounters unfold beyond any witness. Generations are born, hunt, reproduce, and disappear while the surrounding environment carries on with remarkable consistency. Observation changes understanding, but it does not alter the ancient patterns themselves. Perhaps this is why the vast unknown beneath the surface feels less like an unfinished task than an enduring companion. Its mysteries are not evidence of failure or neglect. They remind us that life does not exist in order to be documented. It exists because each successful generation leaves another behind, continuing a story that began long before anyone thought to record it. The deep ocean has never depended upon curiosity to sustain its inhabitants. As another night gradually settles toward rest, those distant hunters continue their patient work beneath miles of water, unseen and almost unchanged. They remain where they have always been, carrying forward an ancient practice of measured waiting that asks for no recognition. The darkness keeps them, the ocean surrounds them, and the long rhythm of life continues, one careful moment at a time. The ocean covers approximately 71% of Earth's surface. Its average depth reaches about 3,688 meters, which is about 12,101 feet. Beneath 200 meters, which is about 656 feet, sunlight fades beyond usefulness, and the largest living habitat on the planet begins. It stretches across immense plains, steep ridges, ancient trenches, and unseen mountains, belonging not to the swiftest swimmers or the strongest hunters, but to creatures that have mastered endurance through restraint. Even now, beneath the waves somewhere beyond the horizon, a goblin shark drifts through water only a few degrees above freezing. Its sensitive organs, reading the faint electrical traces produced by every nearby heartbeat and muscle. An anglerfish carries its small living lantern through the darkness, A viperfish rises from deeper water as part of its ancient daily rhythm, following patterns established across uncounted generations before descending again as the cycle continues. Somewhere else, a cookie-cutter shark approaches from below, guided by instinct, refined across immense spans of evolutionary time until every movement serves a precise purpose. None of these animals knows that their existence has become part of human understanding. None depends upon observation to continue. Their lives unfold according to the same enduring principles that shaped them long before anyone imagined descending into the deep ocean. Generation follows generation. Success is measured only by survival and renewal. The darkness neither celebrates nor remembers. It simply allows what works to continue. Throughout this journey, every remarkable adaptation has pointed toward the same conclusion. Elaborate jaws, living sources of light, remarkable teeth, hidden forms of camouflage, extraordinary patience, and bodies built to endure crushing pressure are not separate curiosities. Together, they reveal an environment that rewards efficiency above excess. Every unnecessary movement carries a cost. Every successful opportunity carries extraordinary value. Life persists because it spends carefully, waits faithfully, and acts with remarkable precision when the moment finally arrives. There is something unexpectedly familiar within that ancient rhythm. As another evening gradually settles toward rest, the human body also begins conserving rather than spending. Breathing grows slower. Muscles release the effort they carried throughout the day. Thoughts that once demanded immediate attention begin drifting farther apart, leaving wider spaces between them. Awareness softens without disappearing altogether, following a pace that has accompanied countless nights across human history. Perhaps that is why the deep ocean has always drawn the imagination. It exists beyond ordinary experience, yet it reflects patterns already woven into living bodies. It reminds us that not every form of success belongs to speed, force, or constant motion. Some belong to endurance, some belong to careful timing. Some belong to the remarkable ability to remain present until the right moment arrives. When morning eventually returns, the deep sea will remain exactly where it has always been. Beneath the bright surface, beyond the reach of ordinary light, ancient hunters will continue their patient routines without interruption. The goblin shark will still be listening for faint electrical signals. The anglerfish will still carry its gentle glow. The viperfish will continue its measured ascent and descent. The cookie-cutter shark will continue tracing the passing shapes of larger travelers above. Their world does not pause while ours sleeps. It continues its enduring work beneath miles of water, following rhythms older than humanity itself. And as the night carries you gently toward rest, that vast hidden ocean continues exactly as it always has, holding its ancient stories, preserving its enduring lives, and keeping watch through the darkness until another dawn arrives.